If you remember the Occupy Nigeria protest in January, the DPO that shot that protester in Oba was 2 weeks before then in charge of Special Anti-Robbery Squad. 2 weeks after he was made a DPO and asked to go and head public order policing. What happened? Because his mindset had been oriented to everybody that comes around him is a criminal suspect. And that was perhaps what informed that high-handed approach. Whereas, when you are policing public order, you're supposed to have a unit specially trained for that to deal with it. We also look at duplication of policing agencies. There are too many organizations doing policing functions in Nigeria. At the end of the day, they draw their personnel from the police. They also depend. The resources that would have gone to the police to do their work is dissipated on them. EFCC, almost 10 years after, their leadership comes from the police. The operatives come from the police. Then why do you create them in the first place? And we went ahead to oversight agencies. There are too many of them. You have Ministry of Police Affairs that duplicates the bureaucracy of the police. You have Police Service Commission that essentially there to rubber stamp decisions taken by the police. We're saying these agencies need to be restructured to really play the role there. So we looked at a whole lot of it, and at the heart of it is that policing is a local matter. We need to remodel our police stations.
So what you're saying is that as it stands, you're also looking at reforms as we currently have the Nigeria police structure currently,
Precisely.
but you're also not ruling out the state policing option. Do you think that a move from what we have currently, even if these reforms are carried out, would also, can also work side by side with, say, a state police?
Precisely, because in a federation, you're supposed to have a federal police, and the constituencies, the federating units, have their own police. So even if you set up state police, you still need a very effective federal police that can take over functions where the states are inadequate in doing it. If you watch American movies, you have a crime scene, a local police department will be dealing with it, but when it crosses border, the FBI comes and say, we are now in charge. That's the way it's supposed to work, when you have a legal framework that delineates the functions of these levels of policing.
How are you going to deal with, you did talk about duplication of policing agencies. You talked about the AFCC, ICPC, FRSC, NAPTIP, NDLEA. But the thing is, of course, I see that highlighted there. Some of these agencies merging with the police force may not be visible.
Precisely. That's why our recommendation is that the federal government should set up a committee to look at all these agencies, identify those that can be merged with the police, and those that cannot be merged with the police. You create an interagency platform flowing from the leadership so that they would cooperate in the field, because what happens in the field that they are all competing for limited resources, and at the end of the day, the functions suffer.
Yeah, but aren't they supposed to, first of all, identify why is it that, yes, there may be duplication of policing agencies, but some of them seem to be performing or delivering to some extent? Why is that? And how come that didn't happen before their creation with the police?
That's part of what the terms of reference of such a committee should deal with. Why is it that the same people that, when they were removed from the police and put in a smaller unit, that they perform better? It may well be that in those smaller units, they are better provided for, they are better remunerated. And it may interest you to know that the chairman of the EFCC, who is an assistant commissioner of police, later promoted, earns more than the IG. Earns more than the IG. The EFCC has a functional forensic lab. The police doesn't have.
But he's still a police officer.
He's still a police officer.
And he still hopes to be promoted.
Precisely. By the police.
And by superior boss, so he earns more.
He earns more than. So all these, challenges need to be addressed by a committee. Because also, why all these agencies are established, if you must know, many of them are not because of local needs. When drug was trending in Nigeria in the 90s, the Americans put pressure on Nigeria. We set up NDLEA. When advanced fee fraud took over, they put pressure on us, say we are going to be removed from Financial Intelligence Task Force list of compliant countries. We rushed and set up EFCC. So some of these agencies are set up in response to demand from abroad.
But in all of this, what did you find as the main cause mitigating against the effective performance of the police?
There are 1,001 of them, which we try to address. At the heart of it is a legal framework that does not free the force to being a professional service, not beholden to political authority. You have material deficiencies that the average police station hardly can afford a functional patrol vehicle to respond to distress calls. So when you have distress calls, how do they respond? The community that are supposed to partner with the police by giving actionable information do not, because of distrust and police abuse. So you have a whole lot of it, and we try to outline them in this report, hoping that government will take interest in it. But we are not resting on government alone. We're also going to mount a huge advocacy campaign to compel the implementation.
You also talked about specialization of functions. So what does that mean?
Now, if you come into a professional police force, you have those who are oriented towards investigation, the detectives, who in many jurisdictions are regarded as the elite. You have those who process the information, the criminal analysts, so that when you have crime data coming in, they will profile them and know when. You have those who are dealing with the scientific part of it, you know, the forensic departments, and so that when you come into the force, for instance, you are a lawyer, you will know that you will go to the legal section. You are a criminologist or a forensic expert. You are going to a lab to work. You have all those, but now everybody comes into the police trained as a general duty officer, posted on day one to some function. The next day, as they are frequently moved, taken to a totally different function without adequate training and preparation for those functions. And that leads to some of the problems we talk about.
I see one here.
In terms of talking about, specialization, you've talked about duplication of, agencies that could have been a part of the police. Doesn't this also kind of encourage a specialization? Because assuming we had the same functions in the police, wouldn't there be duplication of efforts, as it were?
Not really. See, when you set up an agency that is independent, you replicate bureaucracies and overhead expenses that could have been used, to address real needs in the field. And because if you go to EFCC, NDLA and all that, they are top heavy. And all these resources, if they are within the police, serving a specialized unit, will be plowed into direct operational activities. So when you duplicate, it's not just the personnel that are being, spread too thin. It's also resources to do the work. At the end of the day, all the agencies are crying about the same thing: inadequate resources. And it might interest you to know that without international support from international agencies, organizations like EFCC and NDLA will be struggling, because federal government set them up, only guarantee the salary, but the tools to do the work are hardly supplied.
On the ban of police unionism, how does that affect their performance? Because I see here that the report highlighted the fact that contrary to the widespread belief that it's illegal for them to have an association or group, Section 40 of the Constitution actually allows freedom of movement and association, and so they should bring that back. But he also recommended that, yes, they can form association for the purpose of collective bargaining, but be barred from using the strike option in pressing their concerns or demands for better conditions of service. So what would be the essence of coming together?
What we are trying to address in that section is this tendency to conflate the right to form union with inevitability of strike, which is not given. Associations are created for collective bargaining. You have within the media, you have NUJ. Just imagine if you have no such union. In other professions, the NMA, Nigerian Medical Association, you have that. All those are to make your employers realize that as workers, you have rights. But that can be done without going on strike, as is done in other places. So we're saying, let them have rights, because when you stop people from meeting and aggregating their interests, they bottle it up, and when it comes out, as we saw in 2002, it becomes mutinous.